there's nothing wrong with the body. It's just sending the wrong signal at the wrong time. So if you change your thought and your mind, you can change the biology. And the mind, is the primary cause of illness on our planet today. What is the name of the switch that controls your biology? Perception. And why that's important is that it's you and how you see the world that controls the biology. We have been given misinformation. When people say a gene turned on and a gene turned off, it sounds like the genes make decisions. Here is the simple truth. A gene is a blueprint. The gene does no control. The gene is never on or off. The gene is red or not red. And what do you think controls the signal? Perception. You are not the victim of your genes because you control your genes. One gene blueprint using epigenetic control can make 30,000 different proteins from one blueprint. So you can come with good genes and then through epigenetic control create cancer, diabetes, and it has nothing to do with the genes but epigenetic control. It returns responsibility for your health to you, and you are not the victim of your genes. Yet every day the media still tells you that genes control this and genes control that. And then people get nervous about what genes are in their family. And as Greg Braden said before, if you look for the disease, you can create the disease through epigenetics. Right now, it appears that about 95% of cancer is not because of mutant genes, but because of epigenetic control. And it can be passed from parent to child like genes. But the difference is you can change your epigenetics at any time. If you change your perception, you change the reading of your genes. If someone tells you you're going to have a disease and you believe that, then you can create the disease. So when you look at yourself, you're not a single entity, but you are a community of 50 trillion cells. But it's important to understand the word community. Every cell is intelligent, but when they're in a community, they give up their personal intelligence and respond to the central voice. In that community, that a cell must follow what the central voice is. And if the central voice says to die, the cells will die. The central voice is the mind. There are signals from the environment, the internal and external environment. The brain, the function of the brain is to perceive the signals and then interpret those signals and then send the information to the cells to control the behavior and the genetics. So the function of the brain is perception, and from that creates the mind. Now, we have heard of something called the placebo effect, right? The placebo effect is when you have a very positive thought that something can heal you, even if it's a sugar pill, but you believe it's the real medicine, then you can heal yourself with that. So the pill didn't heal you, it was the thought that healed you. Statistics reveal that 1/3 of all medical healings, including surgery, are the result of the placebo effect. And this is what medicine does not tell you, is that there is negative thinking, and it's called the nocebo effect. And in the same power that positive thinking can heal you, negative thinking can kill you. Point is that negative thinking can create all the effects of chemotherapy. Now think about this. If a doctor tells you you have a disease, or the doctor tells you you're going to die, and you believe the doctor because he's the professional, the belief will will give you a disease and can cause you to die. So belief becomes an important part of medicine. Now, many of you have heard about the drug Prozac. Every year, billions of dollars are spent on buying Prozac. And here's a surprise, that the Prozac is no better than a sugar pill, so that it is a placebo drug. And yet the people who take it believe in the drug so much, it makes them better. So if you believe that something is good for you, it will be good, and if you believe that it's harmful for you, it will be bad. So the question is, if we are so able to be healthy and young, why do we get sick? And one of the most important reasons is stress. And the function of the stress hormones is to take the energy of the body and get it all to run and fight. So the stress hormones will shut off the functions of things that will not be needed in fight or flight. One of the most important uses of energy in the body is the immune system. Stress hormones shut off the immune system. And the significance is every one of you right now is infected with almost all of the disease germs that humans have. Right now, if I take a blood sample, I will show you all have viruses and bacteria and parasites. And you might say, well, if I'm infected, then why am I not sick? Because if your immune system is working properly, it will suppress these parasites and germs. But the moment you start to shut off the immune system, then these organisms begin to start growing again. So the idea that you catch a disease is not really true. You already have the disease. And the medical people call these germs and parasites opportunistic organisms. So if you are under stress and you shut off the immune system, then you give these organisms the opportunity to then make the disease. And yet, when we get some of these diseases, we go to the medical doctor and they give us drugs to kill the germs and the bacteria. Well, this is very helpful if the disease is going very quickly. That was not the problem in the first place. The problem was stress that shut off the immune system. So to get healing is, okay, treat the disease, but also treat the stress.
Matthew 14, beginning in verse 22. The inspired word of God reads as follows. Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. And when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased.
God sent the disciples to the boat. Jesus is walking on water. But while the other disciples don't recognize Jesus, Peter does. Peter wants to go to Jesus. Peter wants to follow Jesus because Peter knows that no matter how dark the night, no matter how high the waves, no matter how strong the wind or wet the water, Peter knew that it was safer out of the ship in a storm with Jesus than being in a ship in a storm without Jesus. I can hear the other disciples saying, "But Peter, you can't walk on water. says, come. The boat is the safest place to be. But Jesus says, come. The rules of normalcy say you should stay in the boat. But Jesus says, come. Peter shows his faith, gets out of the boat, puts his life at risk, holds his hand out to Jesus, begins to follow Jesus, and he walks on water. Now, we all know the story, and we often condemn Peter because Peter, in his following Jesus, takes his eyes off Jesus and he begins to sink. That Peter has a lapse of faith is why he begins to fall. Even the Bible records Jesus as saying to Peter, "O ye of little faith." But while we condemn Peter, let's give Peter some credit tonight. Because at least Peter got out of the boat. The rest of the disciples stayed in the boats. A little faith is better than no faith at all. If Peter had little faith, the other disciples had no faith. Because if you remain in the boat, you'll never know what it's like to walk on water. Being safe is easy. It's not hard work. Do what everyone else is doing. Do what we've always done. But change is hard. At least Peter got out of the boat, which is more than what the other disciples did. But yet, how many of us stay in the boat without ever exercising faith and walking in the fullness of what God has for our lives?
Peter knew that no matter the storms we face in life, it's always safest with Jesus. I want to talk about the other 11 disciples still in the boat. Why are they still in the boat? Two reasons. Number one, because they're afraid. Number two, because they have a boat, right? Because when you have a boat on the water, you stay in the boat. It's not rocket science. And here's what I mean. When fear takes hold of our lives, we usually turn to something that makes us feel safe, even if it's not God. So let me ask you a very important question today. What's your boat? See, your boat is whatever represents safety and security to you apart from God. If you want to know what your boat is, your fear will tell you. Just ask yourself this. When fear sets in, where do I turn to instead of God? That's your boat. It might be a parent, a friend, a spouse, your children. Maybe it's a career, your physical appearance, your gifting. It could be your possessions, money, alcohol, self-pity. Maybe it's the amount of likes you get on Instagram. Whatever it is, God's telling you today, like Peter, come. Get out of the boat. Seek God with all of your heart and let him turn your fear into faith through trusting him alone.
Understand, I was reading the great Helen Keller. Some of you may know her. She was a great author, great actress. And she was asked the question because she was born blind. She was asked, what could be worse than being born blind? She said, having sight with no vision. Don't be afraid to go out on a limb. Don't be afraid to try something different. Don't be afraid to get out of the boat.
But you know what? It's tough to get out of the boat. There are 12 guys in the boat. There's only one that gets out of the boat. Just one. The other 11 are like white knuckling it there. It's like, we like the boat, Lord. The boat's good, big. The boat's holding us up. It's scary to get out of the boat, isn't it? You know, let me tell you some things about the boat. You know, the boat in their situation was a real boat. The boat in our situation today is not a real boat. It's a symbol. It represents things in our lives. See, the boat for you, it represents safety and security and comfort. And when you are asked to leave that which is safe and secure and comfortable, to do what? To step out on stormy seas. That's scary. Man, this boat, this just seems so safe. And man, I think I don't want to leave here. Because out there is the unknown. I've never been out there. I don't know what that's like other than sinking and drowning. And so I don't really want to venture out there, Lord. I like it in here. Why don't you come in here? and then we'll have time together.